What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Johnny Larry. So today is the start of March Madness. I'm hoping it's not a much sadness bracket for me here, which I'm going to give a breakdown of my bracket in just a second. I've had some bad brackets in the last couple of years, so I'm hoping I could switch up my luck this year. My last good bracket was probably when Baylor won back in 2021. Since then, I have struggled. I had Kentucky in 2022. They lost right away in the first round, and then I had Marquette last year, and they lost right away in the second round, if I remember correctly. So hopefully this isn't a much sadness bracket. This is a much madness bracket here. So hopefully I don't get too many games wrong early. Usually it's the worst when you lose early on and you know you're done before even the Sweet 16. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of my bracket and then give a look into each team as I do so. So we'll start off with the East region, which that's the toughest part of the bracket, the East. So UConn has a lot of teams they have to go through that could give them a tough time. So we have UConn versus Stetson in the first game here. And UConn is a team that's a reigning national champion, 31-3 overall, trying to become the first back-to-back champion since Florida did it in 2006, 2007. They do have Tristan Newton, a guy that is very good, 15 points per game, 7 rebounds. They have a lot of scorers, 5 guys at double digits, and for the most part, everybody in that team plays great defense, so it's tough to pick against this team, especially early on, but everyone has them as their winner, so my bold prediction is that this team will lose in the Sweet 16, but we'll see how that works out. As for Stetson, they won the Atlantic Sun Tournament, 22-12 overall. This is their first trip to the Big Dance. Sophomore guard Luke Brown averaging 17 points per game over the last 4 matches. He's shooting 46% from 3 on the season. Wiza Panzo, a 6'7" senior forward, has been struggling as of late, 1 for his last 10 from 3, but still 47% from 3 overall in the year. Just a very tough draw to go up against UConn. Otherwise, I maybe would have taken them in a crazy, let's say, 2-15 upset. I know the sports guru and I both like Stetson to at least keep the game close, but I have UConn winning this one. Next up, we have Florida Atlantic going up against Northwestern. Florida Atlantic was a team last year that made the Final Four, a very dangerous team that's bringing a lot of guys back. As for Northwestern, they do have some injuries heading into this game. That could be a worry for them, but I do think this team has what it takes to still win, even with the injuries. If you look at their numbers, they are 4-1 versus Quadrant 1 teams this season, and with the injuries they do have, they're going to need Boo Buie to really step up. He's averaging 19 points per game, 44% from 3. He does take a lot of threes, but if he gets hot from 3, I think they can win this game. As for Florida Atlantic, they are bringing back a lot of guys from that team, but for some reason, I feel like Northwestern's going to win this game, so I'm going with Northwestern. Next up, we have San Diego State versus UAB. San Diego State, once again, another Final Four team from last year, so UConn does a really tough part of their bracket considering San Diego State's in it, UConn obviously is in it, and then Florida Atlantic. That's 3 of the 4 Final Four teams from last year, all in the same part of the bracket. I'm going to roll with San Diego State in this one, though. I don't think that UAB has enough to win that one. Next up, we have Auburn versus Yale. Auburn's a team I'm very high on in this tournament. They're 27-7 overall. Johnny Broome, their best player, averaging 16 points, 8 rebounds, double threat in every single game. He could slow down Donovan Clingan and the UConn Huskies if they do get to that point and play the Huskies. I think they can slow down UConn in the paint. They're a top 10 team in adjusted efficiency on offense and defense, which is a big part of the game in March Madness, being able to play both ways. So top 10 in both of those adjusted efficiencies is pretty good. They did win the SEC tournament as well. They split with Alabama this season. They did have a close loss to Tennessee at one point this year as well. To be able to succeed on both sides of the ball makes me favor them to make a deep run in this tournament. They're also holding opponents to under 30% from 3, which is top 10 in the country, and they do play very physically, so I do like them in this game over Yale. Next up, we have BYU versus Duquesne. I like BYU in this one. 23-10 overall, 16th in Ken Palm's rankings. This is their first year in the Big 12, and they held their own, honestly. 82 points per game overall this season, 20th best in the country. Giving up 70 points per game, though, which is 110th in the country. So not as good defensively as they are offensively, but they are 12th in adjusted efficiency on offense, so maybe that can play to their advantage. That's a stat I'm looking at a lot more this year than in years past. They are 6-8 in Quadrant 1, and they have beaten Kansas this year. They split in 2 games against Iowa State, both those games being close ones. And their junior guard, Jackson Robinson, is a guy to watch out for. 14 points per game, former top 100 recruit. I do like BYU to win this one. Next up, we have Illinois versus Morehead State. Morehead State's an interesting team. This is their second time making March Madness in the last 4 years. This is a good team. They surprised Clemson in an upset win last year in the NIT tournament. If you look at what they are this year, 26-8 overall, 2 wins in a row heading into the tournament. They did take down the number 1 and number 2 seeds of the Ohio Valley Conference to get to where they are now. 75.5 points per game, giving up 63 points per game. So that is a great margin overall, but their offense is going to be key in this game if they want to try to make a big upset win here over Illinois. Illinois isn't a very good defensive team, so obviously Morehead State, if they could take advantage on offense, that'd be a big difference maker. They did lose to Purdue in Alabama by 30+. That is a worry. Riley Minix and Jordan Lathon, their 2 best players overall. Minix averaging over a block and steal per game with a whopping 21 points per game of 34% shooting from 3. And then Lathon, 15.4 points per game, 6 rebounds, and a steal per game. They have 4 guys in double-digit scoring. So I don't think offense is going to be their problem, especially against a weaker defensive team in Illinois. But I think their problem is going to be trying to stop Illinois on defense. They were 0-4 this year versus Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2. As for Illinois, their numbers, like I said, not a very good defensive team. They've struggled on defense all season long, but on offense, one of the best offenses in the country, top 3 in efficiency. Their issue is their defense. Not a great three-point shooting team either, though, around 130th in three-point percentage. Most of their losses were to good teams this year, so I don't think they're just going to lose to anyone. I do like Morehead State to keep this one close, but I'm going to go with Illinois getting the win. Next up, we have Drake versus Washington State. Drake is an upset pick that a lot of people are taking, which they're a trendy pick, 28-6 overall. This is their 3rd time in March Madness in the last 4 years. To get to where they are, they won the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament, beating Indiana State in the final. Indiana State could have made it in as an at-large bid, but they were left out by the committee. Tucker DeVries is a guy to watch out for on Drake, averaging 22 points per game, 37% from 3, 7 rebounds, and 1.6 steals per game. This kid is dangerous, one of the best scorers in all college basketball each of the last 2 years. Get to know him now. I think he's going to be great in the tournament. Overall for Drake, they are 7-4 versus Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2 teams this season. I do like them to get an upset win here over Washington State. Next up, we have Iowa State versus South Dakota State. Iowa State's a team that's very good defensively. I do think they win this game, but I do think South Dakota State has what it takes to keep this game close. Iowa State, 27-7 overall, a team that is top 3 in defense in efficiency on the season. They could have been a number 1 seed, and I wouldn't have been surprised if that would have been the case. I do worry about their shooting ability, though, just 124th in three-point percentage as a team. The big question is this: does their offense have enough to make a deep run? We know their defense is elite, but their offense is going to need to score at least somewhat. A guy that's asked to do a lot in their offense is Keyshawn Gilbert, averaging 14 points per game. Very good defensive player as well. But I do like Iowa State to win this one. But South Dakota State, I do think can keep this one close. They're a team that's been in the tournament now as of late, so they do have some experience. They made it last year. They are 22-12 overall, 2nd time making it in the last 3 tournaments. 36% shooting from 3 on the year, which is top 50. They are 5-7 in close games, which is a worry. But I do think if their threes are falling, they can keep this game close against a good Iowa State defense. But I'm going to roll with Iowa State winning this one. So now I'm just going to stay in the East bracket and give you who I have going all the way to the final from this bracket. So then we have UConn versus Northwestern in the round of 32. I like UConn in this matchup. Then we get San Diego State versus Auburn. I think Auburn has what it takes to make a very deep run in the tournament. I think they're very underrated. I'm going to take them over San Diego State. And then I got Illinois versus BYU in the next game. I got BYU winning that one in an upset. I think BYU has what it takes to win this game. If you look at BYU's schedule on the season, they held their own in the Big 12. They've beaten Kansas this season. They split with Iowa State. They've shown that they can beat big teams, and Illinois is not very good defensively, so I'm going to go with BYU winning this one. And then we have Drake versus Iowa State. I'm going to roll with Iowa State in that one, but I do think Drake has what it takes to keep that game very close. Next up in the Sweet 16, we have UConn versus Auburn. I like Auburn in an upset here. I know a lot of people like UConn to go all the way to the finals, but just to be different, I'm going to go with Auburn winning this game. And it's not just to be different at the end of the day. I do like Auburn as well as a team. I do think they have what it takes, especially physicality-wise. They do have what it takes to stay with this UConn team, especially in the paint. I'm going to roll with Auburn winning this one. I don't think UConn makes it to the Elite Eight. That would be a major upset considering everybody has UConn essentially at least making it to the finals. But I do like Auburn beating them in the Sweet 16. Then we have BYU versus Iowa State. I'm going to roll with BYU in this one. I think Iowa State is slightly a worry for me, just their offense. I do think if they win 2 games, though, maybe they were to get the offense rolling at that point. But here's the problem with them. Even though they do have a very good defense, winning just 2 games may not mean their offense is going to completely turn things around and get hot. BYU is a team that has held their own, as I said, in the Big 12 this season, averaging 82 points per game, 12th in adjusted efficiency on offense. They were 6-8 in Quadrant 1 games, so they were a couple games out of 500, but they were battle-tested this season. So I like BYU over Iowa State in that one. Then that leaves in the Elite Eight, we have Auburn versus BYU, and I like Auburn in that one. So now for the west side of the bracket, we have UNC versus Wagner. UNC is a team that was 27-7 overall this season. They lost to a hot NC State team in the ACC tournament. Armando Bacot, RJ Davis, 2 guys that it's tough to stop. Davis averaging 21 points per game, 41% from 3. And then Bacot's a double-double just about every game. It's going to be tough to stop this team, especially in the first round. So I don't think Wagner has what it takes to stop them. But Wagner is an interesting team, 16-15 overall. This is their first time making March Madness since 2003. 6'4" guard Melvin Council Jr. is a guy to watch out for. 15-point per game scorer. Had 21 in the game over Howard in the play-in tournament. Probably will have a hard time stopping UNC in the paint, so I do like UNC to win this one, but Wagner is an interesting team. Their first time making March Madness in just about 20 years. Next up, we have Mississippi State versus Michigan State. Mississippi State's a team that's interesting to me as well. I do have them winning this game. They're 21-13 overall this season. They're shooting just 33% from 3, so they're not really great shooting the ball-wise, and they're not really great on either side of the ball. They're not elite on either side. but they were 4-9 in Quadrant 1 games. They've beaten Tennessee this season, so they do have what it takes to beat a big program. As for Michigan State, a lot of people are taking this team because of Tom Izzo. He's a great head coach, obviously, and then they also have former Northeastern Husky Tyson Walker, one of the best point guards in the country, scoring the ball-wise, a very good combo guard. I'm only going to go with Mississippi State in this game, though, because I want to have a different pick than the majority of people. I think this game is going to be a very close, tough battle, but I'm going to go with Mississippi State winning this one. Then we have St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. St. Mary's is a team that was very good all season long. They were 2-1 actually against Gonzaga this season, so they did beat a very good team in Gonzaga 2 of 3 times. Gonzaga's not the team they were in years past, but it's still tough to beat that team 2 of 3 times before the tournament. They did lose to San Diego State, though, this season, and they also lost to Boise State early this season, so St. Mary's sometimes doesn't show up, but they are 20th in Ken Palm's rankings. They were 26-7 overall this season heading into the tournament. As for Grand Canyon, they are a trendy upset pick. A lot of people like them. They're 29-4 overall, 53rd in Ken Palm's rankings. They beat San Diego State, which shows they can compete and beat anybody in this tournament. They're a top 45 team in points per game and points per game allowed, so they're good on both sides of the ball. Watch out for Tyan Grant Foster, a guy that scores 20 points per game for them. He does average 8 free throw attempts per game as well, so he does get to the line by driving and getting fouled. I think Grand Canyon keeps this game close, but I'm going to roll with St. Mary's winning this one. Next up, we have Alabama versus Charleston. I do like Alabama in this game. I do think Charleston has what it takes to be an upset pick here. Alabama has lost 4 of their last 6 games heading into the tournament, so they've been trending downwards as of late. God Mark Sayers has been unreal this season, though, 21 points per game, 43% shooting from 3. They're averaging 91 points per game, which is number 1 in the country, but they're also giving up 82 points per game on defense, which is 356th out of 362 teams. 356th out of 362 teams. So that is historically bad on defense. The main question is this: can they make a few stops on defense if their shots aren't falling? They could fall early considering they got cold heading into the tournament, and Charleston's a team that now has experience in the tournament, making it 2 of the last 3 years. This is the second year in a row that they're in the Big Dance. Good to see them make it yet again. They're a team that battled with Northeastern for years in the CAA tournament, always played the game right, and now obviously Earl Grant is BC's head coach. I saw them play a lot when Earl Grant was their head coach. Back in 2018, they lost to Auburn just by 4 points in the tournament. Last year, they lost just by 6 points to a very good San Diego State team. So this could be the year that Charleston makes a run. The leading scorer, Rain Smith, averaging 13 points per game, just about 40% from 3. A kid that can really shoot the ball. Takes a high volume of threes, but that's Charleston's formula. They've taken more than 300 threes in respect to their opponents this season. 300 more threes than their opponents have this season. So if their threes are falling, I could see them winning this game considering Alabama is cold heading into the tournament. Freshman big man for Charleston, James Scott, is a guy off the bench that is a grinder. 5 points per game, 4 rebounds and a block off the bench. He's a guy that's going to give you a lot of hustle, but I am going to go with Alabama winning this one. Next up, we have New Mexico versus Clemson. Clemson is the highest seed here, but a lot of people like New Mexico in this game, and I am one of them. I like New Mexico to win this one. They're 26-9 overall. The Lobos can score. Donovan Dent, 14 points per game. Jalen House, 16 points per game. Jamal Mashburn, 14 points per game. A lot of guys that can score in this lineup. They don't shoot the 3 very well. They're 206th in 3-point percentage of the country, but they do beat you in the paint. They can beat you with some jump shots as well. They were 5-6 in Quadrant 1 games, which is very impressive against Quadrant 1 opponents, 5-6. So they have played some good teams this season. They held their own in a majority of those games. As for Clemson, they lost to BC in the ACC tournament, which does make me worry about them a little bit. 21-11 overall. They're lucky they made it in considering they lost to BC early in the ACC tournament. I do like New Mexico getting a win there. Then we have Baylor, number 3 seed versus number 14 Colgate. Baylor 23-10 overall. And then you've got Colgate 25-9. Colgate's a team that could surprise maybe. You never know at the end of the day. It seems like every year there's a 14 seed that either wins or is right there at the end, is making that 3 seed sweat. As for Baylor, though, I do think they'd win this game. They're 23-10 overall, a top 5 offense in the country in efficiency. They're also 6-5 in close games with a 10-9 record in Quadrant 1 games. So they haven't tested a lot this season, especially in their conference in the Big 12. They were 39.4% shooters from 3 on the season, which is 6th best in the country. Something I weigh heavily is 3-point shooting in March Madness, since if your threes are falling at the end of the day in March Madness, you're capable of beating anyone, just like we saw Oral Roberts a couple years ago beat Ohio State. If your threes are falling, you're capable of beating anyone. I like Baylor in this one. Next up, we have Dayton versus Nevada. Nevada's a team that I'm high on. They were 26-7 overall in the regular season, top 40 in adjusted efficiency on offense and defense, so they are good on both sides of the ball, shooting 36.5% from 3, which is 37th in the country. They were 4-2 in close games, 6-6 in Quadrant 1 games, so they have been battle-tested, especially in close games. They have a good record, 4-2. They split with San Diego State this season. They've beaten TCU. They did lose to Drake, so that's a slight worry, but they do have what it takes to win this game. Jared Lucas is a guy to watch out for, averaging 18 points per game, 40% shooting from 3. I do like Nevada over Dayton in this one, but I do think it's going to be a physical, Tough game, right down to the wire. I do like Nevada to win. And then we have Arizona versus Long Beach State. Arizona is a team that a lot of people say the sky's the limit for this team. I completely agree with them. It's just a question of whether or not they're going to show up. Caleb Love averaging 18 points per game. Also, Pac-12 Player of the Year. This is the last year of the Pac-12, so he's the last Pac-12 Player of the Year in history. He's a tough guy to stop. As for Arizona as a team, they're top 10 on offense and defense in efficiency. In close games, they're just 4-4, but they are 8-3 in Quadrant 1 games. They've lost 2 of the last 3 games, though, heading into the tournament to USC and Oregon, which is a worry to me. But I do think they wake up in the tournament. As for Long Beach State, though, I do like this team. I would be rooting for them in this game. Even though they are a heavy underdog, I do think they keep this somewhat close. They're such a great story. They fired their head coach, Dan Munson, after 17 seasons before the conference tournament. Then they end up going and winning the Big West Conference tournament, making it to March Madness. This is their first trip to March Madness since 2012, so Dan Munson getting another crack at March Madness before getting fired, which after this game's over, he will be done with the program. But I do like the Dirtbags to keep this game close. Long Beach State, 21-14 overall, a grinding team that obviously played hard for their coach. Here is Dan Munson after their win in the Big West Conference Tournament Championship.
Take me through this week for you, emotional with your team. How was everything?
It was great. It was great. I mean, I've had a blessed, God has blessed me with a great career, and these kids have been awesome to coach. And when Jim Harbaugh says, who's got it better than him, somebody needs to tell him Dan Munson.
Now, your guys showed up big this tournament, made some big wins. What's special about this group of young men?
You know, they're good people, you know, and that's what you got to start with. They have character. You know, we had an up and down year, but they came in here and they played for each other. We quit playing together and started playing for each other.
Now, Coach, you have an amazing resume, a great career. Where does this moment rank for you as a coach?
Well, I got the 99 run at Gonzaga, but as Mark Fuchs said in a text, why don't we have a run at the first year and one in the last? So, but I don't think this is my last. I love coaching. I love teams. I need a new challenge, but it's life. It's on to the next chapter.
So obviously a great story with Long Beach State this season. Just making it to the tournament after firing their coach is obviously great. He's actually a funny guy as well, as you can tell from the clip there. And then also in a press conference yesterday, he said something like he's not getting paid, for these games. At the end of the day, he's not going to answer any questions. Just joking around with the media, which I thought was pretty funny. But I do like Arizona to win this game, but I will be rooting for Long Beach State. Even though I do have Arizona making a deep run in the tournament, seeing Long Beach State win this game would be awesome. But I'm going to go with Arizona winning this one in my bracket. So now in the round of 32, we have UNC versus Mississippi State. I like UNC to win that one. Then we have St. Mary's versus Alabama. I like Alabama to win this game. I think their offense is going to catch fire. And if they do have a cold game, I could see St. Mary's winning this game rather easily, especially if Alabama isn't shooting the 3-ball well. But Alabama's offense is very efficient. They get as many shots up as they can. That's been the difference maker this season. Quick possessions, getting the shot up quick, playing to the tempo that they want. So I do like Alabama to win this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if St. Mary's wins. Next up, we have New Mexico versus Baylor. I do like Baylor in this one. I do think New Mexico has what it takes to make the Sweet 16, but I already have a lot of upsets, especially on the right side of the bracket. So I'm going to go with Baylor here. Then we have Nevada versus Arizona. I'm going to go with Arizona. I think the sky's the limit for this team. If they put things together, they could win it all. Then next up in the Sweet 16, we have UNC versus Alabama. I like Alabama in this one. I originally went UNC, but I changed it in my bracket before this episode. I think Alabama's offense can catch fire, and I think UNC has been inconsistent. Even though they've beaten a lot of good teams, they have a very good record overall, 27-7. They've beaten Duke, obviously, twice this season. I do worry about them staying consistent in this tournament. I do think they have what it takes to make a deep run, but I also think they have what it takes to potentially lose early, maybe even to Mississippi State or Alabama. I like Alabama's offense to win this game. I know Alabama has struggled defensively. This would probably be a high-scoring game, like 110-100. I mean, it's just crazy. It probably wouldn't be that high, but this would be a very high-scoring game, like 95-90. But I'm going to roll with Alabama winning this one. Then we have Baylor versus Arizona. I like Arizona. So now that'll leave Alabama versus Arizona in the Elite Eight. I'm going to roll with Arizona winning that one, going to the Final Four. So my Final Four teams on the left side of the bracket, I have Auburn and Arizona. Now on the top right side of the bracket, we have Houston versus Longwood. Houston 30-4 overall. Longwood 21-13. Longwood made it in as a conference tournament winner. They actually won the Big South tournament after being the 5th seed. They made a deep run. They took down High Point, the number 1 seed in the finals, winning that game 80-79. They were down 7 points at halftime, but won the game in overtime. averaging 76 points per game in the season. They can't score the ball. 3 plays in double figures on the year. Michael Christmas is their best shooter, averaging 41% from 3, 11.5 points per game. But Longwood doesn't have the defense to stop Houston. Even though this is their second trip to March Madness in 3 years, I do think Houston is going to take care of business here. Houston overall 30-4. They're top 16 in adjusted offense. They're also number 1 in adjusted defense efficiency, which is obviously a statistic that I'm weighing heavily this season, more than years past for sure. I do think they make a tough out, especially early in the tournament, so I'm going to have them winning at least a couple games. I know a lot of people like them to make a deep run, and I understand why. Jawan Roberts, though, and Ramon Walker are battling injuries. That is a worry. They are battling some injuries, but LJ Cryer is a guy to watch out for, averaging 15 points per game. I like Houston in this one. Then we have Nebraska going up against Texas A&M. I like Nebraska in this game. They were 4-7 in Quadrant 1 games, 23-10 overall, though. They've beaten Purdue this season. They were blown out by Creighton, so against 2 very good teams. They won one of them and lost one of them. They are 29th in the KenPom rankings. I think they beat Texas A&M in this one. Then we have Wisconsin going up against James Madison. This is a big upset for me. I'm going to go James Madison. They were 31-3 overall, so they know they have what it takes to win games. They're holding opponents to just 29% shooting from 3, which is second best in college basketball. 31 wins. This team knows how to win ball games, especially close games. They were 8-2 in close games this season. An important metric in March Madness, especially in a potential upset, is how good you are in close games. They were very good, 8-2 overall. Terrence Edwards is the best player on their team, 17 points per game. But watch out for former BC Eagle TJ Bickerstaff, who has played very well for them this season, averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds. They're a good three-point shooting team as well, 36.5% from 3, which is around the 30s overall in all college basketball. I do like James Madison in this one. I know it's an upset pick, especially considering Wisconsin is a 5 seed. Wisconsin 22-13 overall, but if you look at their points per game and opponent points per game, they were 132nd in points per game and 111th in opponent points per game. They were 13th in adjusted efficiency on offense, so it's obviously different than what their points per game would tell you, but they were just 3-7 in close games. And I think this game is going to be a close one. And like I said, James Madison is 8-2 overall close games. So I favor James Madison in this one. Then we have Duke versus Vermont. Duke, 24-8 overall. I like John Shire a lot. I know a lot of people have criticized him, but I think he is a great head coach. Kyle Filipowski will make things hard on Vermont in the paint. He's averaging 17 points per game. They did lose to UNC twice this season, but I don't think they're going to lose to Vermont in the first round. With that being said, I will be rooting for Vermont, 28-6 overall. This is the 3rd year in a row making the big dance, so credit to John Becker. He's been great with them as their head coach. They were 0-2 versus Quadrant 1 teams this season with a 22-point loss to Virginia Tech. That's obviously wary, losing by 22 points to Virginia Tech. This team knows how to win ball games, though. I'm going to be rooting for them, but I think it's a tough matchup. I'm going to go with Duke winning that one. Then we have Texas Tech going up against NC State. Texas Tech is a team that a lot of people are picking against. A lot of people are going against them and picking NC State in this one. But I think NC State's run is going to end early in the tournament. They were 9-5 in close games this season, so if this is a close game, NC State probably could win this one. They've won 5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament, so they've shown that they can win games, especially games they have to grind out. They were just the second team in a major conference to win 5 games in 5 days in the conference tournament, the first team to do so since Kemba Walker's UConn days. So a very impressive stretch there from NC State. DJ Burns is a beast, a guy that a lot of people are going to enjoy watching in March Madness, but I think their luck runs out in the first round. I'm going to go with Texas Tech winning that one. Then we have Kentucky going up against Oakland. I like Kentucky a lot. I think their backcourt is very hard to stop. They score the ball very, very well. I think it's going to be tough for a team like Oakland to keep up with. Kentucky 23-9 overall. They've given up 89 points per game in 10 games this season, so that is a worry, is their defense, giving up 100 points per game in 2 matches this season. So defense is definitely an issue for them, but they are very efficient on offense. Top 5 in efficiency on offense, 125th though in adjusted efficiency on defense, so the defense is definitely a worry. They're shooting 41% from 3 as a team, though, the best in the country. They're just 6-7 in Quadrant 1 games, though, so that's a worry for sure, but March Madness is all about being able to shoot threes, and then you're either lights out on offense or lights out on defense. Kentucky is lights out on offense, kind of like Oral Roberts was a few years ago. Lights out on offense, can shoot the 3 very well. And then defense, they just have to grind out and just have to find a way to get some stops when their shots aren't falling. I do like Kentucky to win this one. Rob Dillingham, a top 3 pick in my opinion. 15 points per game, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He's been great shooting the ball from 3, 45% from 3 in the season. Reed Shepard, another freshman just like Dillingham, averaging 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He's a guy to watch out for, probably a top 10 pick in the NBA draft as well. And then Antonio Reeves is the leading scorer for Kentucky this season, averaging 20 points per game. I like Kentucky in this one over Oakland. Oakland, this is their first time making the big dance since 2011. They were 23-11 overall this season, 8-1 in the last 9 games, so they are hot heading into the tournament. Trey Townsend, averaging 17 points per game, also averaging 6 free throw attempts per game, so he does get to the line. 7.8 rebounds per game and over a steal per game as well, so he's a force in the paint on offense and defense. They're playing with house money, just like their coach said at the end of the day, so even though They did win their conference tournament. That was probably a big accomplishment on its own. So now making it into the tournament, playing Kentucky, is just playing with house money. So you never know at the end of the day what's going to happen in March Madness, but I do like Kentucky to win this one. Next up, we have Florida versus Colorado. I like Florida in this one. I know Colorado did win the play-in game last night, but the issue with them, if my count's right, this is going to be the 6th game in 11 days. And they didn't really play well versus Boise State last night. They did find a way to win, but they didn't play well in that one. So I'm going to roll with Florida winning this game here. Even though Florida is the highest seed, and obviously some people want some upsets, so some people are taking Colorado in this one. Florida 24-11 overall. They were 24th in Ken Palm's rankings. They're top 20 in adjusted offensive efficiency, which is something I'm looking a lot more into this season, like I've said. They were 2-1 versus Alabama this season. That does make Florida dangerous. I like Florida in this one. And then we have Marquette versus Western Kentucky. Marquette does have a question mark in their lineup with Tyler Kolek potentially not playing in this game. They did lose early on me last season, so I'm not really going to trust them too much this year. Shaka Smart is a great head coach, but Tyler Kolek's injury is something that's going to worry me, and it's really an unknown whether or not he's going to play in the first round or the second round. So I'm going to roll with Marquette still winning this game, but I'm not going to have them going all the way like I did last season. So now for my round of 32 games, we have Houston versus Nebraska. I like Houston. I think Houston, if they could put things together, I think they're just as dangerous as anybody in the country. Then we have James Madison versus Duke. I want to go with James Madison, but I'm going to roll with Duke here. I think Duke has what it takes to make a run in this tournament. I think James Madison, if they win that first game, they are very capable of beating Duke, but I'm going to roll with Duke here. Then we have Texas Tech versus Kentucky. I like Kentucky a lot. I think they're going to be too much for Texas Tech on offense. Kentucky could just score so much. Texas Tech is going to struggle on defense, I think, versus them. Then we have Florida versus Marquette. I like Marquette to win this game. Then in the Sweet 16, we have Houston versus Duke. I like Houston. Then we have Kentucky versus Marquette. I like Kentucky, leaving it to be Houston versus Kentucky in the Elite Eight. I'm going to go with Kentucky here. I think their offense can catch fire and beat anybody in the country. It's just whether or not they can get a couple stops. Houston is definitely probably the number one threat in this side of the bracket. I think Houston is capable of making the Final Four and even making it to the finals. But I'm going to roll with Kentucky here. I am a Kentucky fan. I think Rob Dillingham is one of the best players in the country, and hopefully he gets a lot more recognition in the tournament. So I'm going to roll with Kentucky making the Final Four. Now for the Midwest part of the bracket, we have Purdue versus Grambling. Purdue's a team that not many people can trust, and I understand why. They've lost early in the tournament, it seems like every single season, but they are 29-4 overall. Even though they seem to always lose early in the tournament, I think this is the year they turn things around and make it deeper. Run Zach Edey, 24 points per game, 12 rebounds, an absolute force in the paint. Even though he's not the most exciting player to watch, he gets his job done every single game. 3-time Big Ten Player of the Year. Also the National Player of the Year last year. Probably wins it this year as well. Purdue 20-4 versus Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2 teams this season. They were top 2 in adjusted offense, 17th in adjusted defensive efficiency, which is pretty good. 41% shooting from 3. They shoot the 3 ball very well, second best in the NCAA. I do like them to win this game. Then we have Utah State going up against TCU. Some people are picking Utah State. I'm going to roll with TCU in this one. They're a team that I had going very far last year. I know Mike Miles is no longer there, but I do like Emmanuel Miller, a guy that's averaging 16.6 rebounds, 3 assists. They were just 5-11 versus Quadrant 1 teams this season. They used to be a lot better, especially last season, but they were 21-12 overall. A team that plays very hard even when they are an underdog. I do like TCU to win this one. Then we have Gonzaga going up against McNeese. I like McNeese State to win this game. They were 30-3 overall this season, so they do have what it takes to win games. They know how to win. Watch out for Shahada Wells, a guy averaging 18 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 40% from 3. If they do win that round 1 game, I think it's going to be because of him. DJ Richards off the bench was a very good shooter as well, 11 points per game, also shooting 45% from 3, which is absolutely wild. They have a lot of guys that can shoot the 3 very well. They're 39% from 3 as a team, 4th best in the country. They're a very under-the-radar team and a very dangerous team that can shoot the 3 very well. They give me flashbacks of that 2021 Oral Roberts team who was 0-5 in Quadrant 1 games, but they were top team in 3-point shooting in college basketball. And those are the same vibes I'm getting here from McNeese State. They were 60th in the Ken Palm rankings heading into the tournament, above a good team at Seton Hall who missed the tournament. It shows that they can play. And I know Barstool yesterday was making fun of the teams on their schedule heading into the season and the teams that they played this year, but at the end of the day, the players do not pick their schedule. They got their business done, 30-3 overall. So I do like them to beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga 25-7 overall this season, 3-6 versus Quadrant 1 teams. They were top 10 in adjusted efficiency on offense, but the defense is not great. That's definitely a weakness for them, especially in comparison to years past. In the last 10 games, very good on offense efficiency-wise, but 111th in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. They aren't great defensively, so I do like McNeese State. Just shoot the 3 ball very well and win this one. Then we have Kansas versus Samford. Kansas 22-10 overall, but they do have a lot of injuries heading into the tournament. Kevin McCullough, their best player overall, will not play in the tournament. That's definitely a big loss for them. As for Samford, they might upset pick yet again, another upset pick for me. Samford 29-5 overall, 69th in adjusted efficiency on offense, 126th in adjusted defense. So obviously not a great defensive team, but they do shoot the three ball very well. And like I've noted now, obviously, shooting the three ball is something I do value, but you can't have cold games shooting from three. They were 0-2 in quadrant one games this season. Both of their losses were early this season, a blowout loss to Purdue and also a loss to VCU. But 39% shooting from three is 7th best in the country. Achor is a beast on both ends of the floor. 45% shooting from three, 16 points per game, 6 rebounds, and just about 2 blocks per game as well. He's been absolutely balling this season for Samford. Jaden Campbell, another guy to keep your eye on, 47% shooting from three. They have a lot of guys that can shoot the ball very well from three, which makes them dangerous against a Kansas team that is 211th in three-point percentage. They're also 169th in opponent three-point percentage. So Kansas is going to struggle in this game, especially with their injuries. I do like Samford to win this game over Kansas. Next up, we have South Carolina going up against Oregon. South Carolina is a team that I think is under the radar, honestly, considering where they're at. They're 26-7 overall, 11-3 in close games, 6-5 in quadrant one games. They beat Kentucky this year as well. They really did struggle overall this season against Alabama and Auburn, but 11-3 in close games definitely leads me to take them to win this game. I know Oregon's a team that is a little bit under the radar as well, but considering South Carolina is very close in close games, I think this game's going to be a close one. I'm going to go with South Carolina. With that being said, though, Oregon's a team that's dangerous. They have played very well in close games this season, 8-5 in close games this season. Just 4-6 in quadrant one games, though. They did beat Arizona and Colorado in the Pac-12 tournament, but I'm going to roll with South Carolina winning this one. Then we have Creighton versus Akron. Akron, the MAC champion, going up against Creighton, who was 23-9 overall. Akron was 24-10 overall. Creighton, 8-5 in quadrant one games. They were also top 10 in adjusted efficiency on offense, also 30th in adjusted efficiency on defense. So they're pretty good on both sides of the ball. They were 1-1 against Marquette this season, with their loss being a close game. 1-1 versus UConn, so they've shown that they can beat some of the best teams in the country. Baylor Shireman, 18 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 4 assists as well. He has been great. Also takes a lot of threes, though, over 8 3-point attempts per game, but he's shooting 37% from three. He's a guy to keep your eye on. I think he's going to have a great tournament. Then they have Trey Alexander as well, 17.6 points per game, 33% shooting from three, 6 rebounds per game, 5 assists, also averaging over a steal per game. He can turn the ball over, which is an issue, but I do think, obviously, what he can bring on the offensive end, shooting the ball, is definitely an advantage for Creighton. So, obviously, the Blue Jays have a lot of scoring options. Another guy that mentioned, Ryan Kalkbrenner, another scorer, averaging 17 points and 7 rebounds per game. I like Creighton to win this one. Next up, we have Texas going up against Colorado State. I like Texas to win this game. They've Max Abmas, one of the best scorers in college basketball over the last 5 years. A guy that made a deep run with Oral Roberts just about a couple years ago now. One of the best scorers in the country still, a very good three-point shooter, and he's shown he has what it takes to make a deep run in the tournament. I'm going to roll with Texas winning this one over Colorado State. Then we have Tennessee going up against St. Peter's. I don't think St. Peter's has what it takes to make a deep run like they did a few years ago. I think Tennessee is going to be too much for them to handle. Tennessee 24-8 overall. A team that's very underrated at this point. Definitely a squad that has what it takes to make a deep run and win the tournament. They're a top 3 defense in the country, a good offensive team as well. Somewhere around 30th in offense in the country. They lost right away in the SEC tournament, though, to Mississippi State, so that's why some people are staying away from them. But they didn't shoot well that day, just 8 of 33 from 3. I do think they shoot the 3 better in this tournament. I'm going to roll Tennessee over St. Peter's in this one. So now we have Purdue versus TCU. I liked TCU originally, but I'm going to roll with Purdue. I think this is the year they turn things around. Then we have McNeese going up against Samford, 2 underdogs that are making a deep run here. One of them's going to make the Sweet 16, which is pretty crazy considering they are both 12 and 13 seeds. I like McNeese State to win this game. They're a good three-point shooting team, very under the radar. I know a lot of people are making fun of their schedule, but like I said, the players didn't pick their schedule. I like McNeese State to win this one. Then we have South Carolina going up against Creighton. I like Creighton. I think they have what it takes to make the Final Four. Then we have Texas versus Tennessee. I like Tennessee. I think there'd be too much on the defensive end for Texas, even though Texas does have what it takes shooting the ball wise, especially with Max Abmas. I like Tennessee to win this one. Then we have Purdue going up against McNeese State in the Sweet 16. I think the Cinderella run ends there for McNeese State, and the Cinderella slipper falls off. So I'm going to go with Purdue there winning that one. And then we have Creighton versus Tennessee. I like Creighton. So then now we have Purdue versus Creighton in the Elite Eight. I'm going to go with Creighton. For some reason, I do like this team a lot. I think they're very good on both sides of the ball. A very under-the-radar team that was 8-5 in quadrant one games this season. Top 10 in adjusted efficiency on offense. 30th in adjusted efficiency on defense. 1-1 versus Marquette. 1-1 versus UConn. They have shown what it takes. They can beat some of the better teams in college basketball. UConn is a team that a lot of people have going all the way to the finals. And they were 1-1 versus UConn this season. So they do have what it takes to make a deep run. I'm going to go with Creighton making it all the way to the Final Four. I have them beating Purdue there in the Elite Eight. So now my Final Four teams, we have Auburn in the East. We have Arizona in the West. We have Creighton in the Midwest, and we have Kentucky in the South. I wanted to go with Houston, honestly, just because I pick Kentucky every year, it seems like, because I am a Kentucky fan. Ever since the De'Aaron Fox days, I followed Kentucky. Big fan of their program and everything they do every single year. Always a competitive team. But here's the issue. I pick them every single year, so that's a worry to me. But I do think this is the year they could break the curse where they lose early, it seems like every year, where they lost to St. Peter's a couple years ago. That was very disappointing. Houston's a team that is battling some injuries. They are a very good team. I wouldn't be surprised if Houston does beat them in the Elite Eight, but I'm rolling with Kentucky there for a reason. I think their offense is going to be tough to stop. So I have Kentucky going up against Creighton in the right side of the bracket of the Final Four. I like Creighton to win that one over Kentucky. And then we have Auburn versus Arizona in the Final Four of the other side of the bracket. I like Auburn there. And my champion in March Madness this year is Creighton. Watch out for Baylor Scheierman. I think he's going to put on a show this year in March Madness. He does take over 8 3-point attempts per game, shooting 37% from three. If he can find a way to stay hot from three, and this Creighton team can stay hustling like they have and make it hard on whatever team they're playing against like they have this season, which they were 8-5 against Quadrant 1 teams. So they have what it takes, obviously, especially in a tough conference in the Big East. That's not an easy conference to have a very good record, but they had a very good year overall. If you look at their record overall, 23-9. So I do like Creighton to win the tournament. They are my winner of March Madness. I'll probably fill out another bracket as well, but my big bracket, the one that's my main one that I'm going with here for the podcast. So we got Creighton over Auburn. But I like Auburn to make a deep run. I think that team is very capable of beating UConn. Some teams that I think could really upset early on. I think UConn could be upset by the Sweet 16. The same goes for UNC. I think, honestly, to some degree, I think Long Beach State could give Arizona a run for their money. But I rolled with Arizona in my bracket and making the Final Four. As always, in March Madness, you never know what's going to happen. Anyone's bracket could be right at the end of the day. Like we saw last year, nobody had those Final Four teams making it. San Diego State and Miami. And then obviously UConn making it as well in Florida Atlantic. Nobody had those teams making it all the way to the Final Four. So anybody's bracket could be right at the end of the day. Obviously, things could fall flat right away, and a team that I pick early on, like Auburn, could lose early. But that's the beauty of March Madness. Nobody knows who's going to win each game. And that's the beauty of sports in general. Nobody knows who's going to win any game. There's so much unknown every single game, and that's what makes sports so great to watch and so fun to watch. I think March Madness this weekend is the best weekend in sports, I'd say, overall in the year. You have Thursday and Friday games, all day there's games, and obviously a lot going on, a lot of potential upsets every single year. So it's obviously a great weekend. Hopefully everybody gets to enjoy it. Anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.